Welcome back to Hot Cheese. You are joining us after yet another debacle by the Green Bay Packers. I was there in person, unfortunately. So was my son, who was there for his high school graduation present. It didn't go well. The Packers go down to the Buccaneers 34-20. However, there is good news on the horizon, and that is we've got another special guest today. Going to have an interview with somebody that I've been talking to before. Probably talked to Ryan more than any other podcaster that I've been involved with and collaborated with. But very, very excited to have Ryan back with us. Ryan Schlipp, the Pack Daddy. How are you doing, man?
I am tired, but I'm doing good, and I'm ready to watch a better version of the Packers. And I'm sure one of these times they're going to have to redeem themselves. So why not against the Panthers?
That's right. If there's a team that we can do it against, I guess it's the Panthers.
So.
Yes. However, if we don't do it against the Panthers, I think all of Packer Nation may implode at one time.
I think so. Yeah. At the very least, there better be at least 6 firings. Otherwise,
yes.
I don't know that the fans will be satiated enough.
No, heads will have to roll at that point. Yeah. It's going to be Bastille Day here pretty soon. So, all right, well, the Packers lose to the Buccaneers 34-20, as I mentioned. I want to quickly go over that game. We know this interview, I'm thinking, is mostly going to be about D coordinator, what needs to happen, Devondre Campbell, what has happened, what he tweeted out. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I think it's important in situations like this, and Ryan, I think you may agree with me, to talk about the good. And so I want to say this for everybody in Wisconsin and Packer fans everywhere. The cheese curds are still good in Wisconsin. They are still really good. They squeak when you get them fresh. They're fantastic. But seriously, though, you watched a bad game. I watched a bad game, especially defensively. It wasn't great offensively either. But one of the things, and I want to get your take on this, Ryan, one of the things I think is still not in question after this bad game is, frankly, Jordan Love. I mean, he goes out there. He did not have a stellar game, but 29 of 39, 284 yards and 2 touchdowns, and made a couple of mistakes, made some errors, took some sacks that we were hoping he wouldn't. But at the same time, also made some plays that Jaden Reed throw that looked very Aaron Rodgers-esque. What are your thoughts? This is again in the loss. What are your thoughts on the way that Jordan Love played and his future with the Packers right now?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of hoping that once we saw what he could be against the Chiefs, that's all we'd ever see again. And I think maybe we were dreaming a little bit. It is unfortunate to see a little bit of a dip. But I think the thing that I like, because my initial take was, we're right back to old Jordan Love, like what we saw several weeks ago. But then I thought about it. I'm like, that's not really true. Even in the Giants game and as well as the Tampa game, the big difference is you're seeing those like, oh my goodness throws. You know what I mean? Yep. I mean, that's something we really didn't see before. You saw the comebacks or whatever, the efficient throws, all that, but it's been pretty consistent. These you just don't really see that outside of a handful of quarterbacks. So yeah, I mean, some stuff's got to get tightened up, but it's still a young team. You know, I'll lay out all the same old excuses, young team and everything else, and injuries and whatnot. But I think there's enough there for us to grab onto and be excited about, and not start panicking. And fortunately enough, there's other areas of the team that are so drastically horrible that we don't even have time to worry about the potential that maybe Jordan is not the guy. So we don't even have to worry about that.
Yeah, well, that's always good.
Yeah.
Before the season began, I think I kind of laid out what I really was hoping for kind of realistically out of Jordan Love. It had nothing to do with record, had nothing to do with his stats or anything like that, but it had to do with him hitting the ground running, looking like he could still run this offense.
Yeah.
Which I think he did in Spain. I think he kind of overdid it week 1. You know, the expectation then all of a sudden went through the roof, and we got a little bit too excited, I think, at that point. But one of the things I was looking for was for him to make those kind of wow plays.
Yeah.
Not every time. Aaron Rodgers didn't make them every time. Brett Favre, for crying out loud, we know didn't make them every time. But to show that he could, and I think, you know, that was a 3rd and 14 touchdown, I believe. And Benj and I are standing there. We were looking right down his line of sight as it happened to be that game. And it was nothing but green grass. And all I'm thinking is just run the ball. And then he hauls off and throws a pass off platform that is just a dead eye shot to get the ball and be able to tap inbounds and score that touchdown. those are the ones that, like you say, I'm 100% in agreement. There's still a lot of consistency, I think, issues. There's
Sure.
still, these young quarterback things. And I am concerned a little bit about the long ball yet. But with all of that in less than one season of full-time work, I really think Jordan Love has showed and put together a body of work that says, yeah, if there's one thing we don't have, if there's one player, coach, or otherwise that we don't have to worry about whether he's going to be back next year, I think it's Jordan Love. So,
yeah, and that's one of the things I said early on. One of the things I'm starting to try to do a little more is, rather than being so black and white, rather than that, kind of looking at it as everybody has their own sort of criteria. So with Jordan Love, I had certain things that I had faith in already and other things that I did not. And so for a lot of people, like, the wow throws weren't really registering. So now that they're seeing him, it's like, that's it. He's the guy. For me, I always felt he was that guy. It was just a question of consistency for me. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm over the moon about some of the stuff we've seen from Jordan Love. I thought that pass to Malik Heath for a touchdown was just unbelievable. And the pass right before that, the touchdown pass that got knocked out, that might even been better because there was nothing there and he just threw it. And it was just, so I am excited, but I think because I came into it saying, I know his ceiling is like the Rodgers-Mahomes tier, I just need to know that he can be a consistent guy. And because that's lacking, I'm a little bit behind everybody else as far as my excitement, but it just like I said, depends how you came into this and what you were looking for with Jordan Love. That'll kind of determine where you're at. And that's true with a lot of stuff, the defense, the offense, Matt LaFleur, whatever. You kind of have a thing of, this is what I expect, this is what I think, and this,
right.
And that kind of shapes where you're at. So trying not to spend so much time saying, well, you're an idiot. It's like, well, maybe they just kind of came into it with a different perspective. I struggle with that sometimes, understanding that people have different ideas and views on things.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they express them badly. I think that's where,
that's
I've listened to you more than one time say, listen, if you come at me with dumb, I can't help but come back. So kudos on that. Just keep up the good work on that. But understood. Yeah. A lot of times people's perspectives has a big difference. And two, with Jordan Love too, at least part of my perspective was Jordan Love didn't need to be Aaron Rodgers. He didn't need to be Brett Favre because we had all of these first round draft choices on defense that were going to cover this multitude of sins. And we certainly didn't see that happen. Not this game and several games this year.
And that's a credit to the offense too, because, I think all of us came into this saying, the defense needs to carry this team this year. I mean, that's just the way it has to be. We've got too much youth and too much inexperience, and we've got too much talent and experience on the other side to expect anything other. And it's really been the offense carrying the defense. And with, again, with all the issues of guys being too young and the miscommunications on offense and all that stuff. And not only that, the thing I talked about, I think yesterday with Matt LaFleur, as far as like, he doesn't even know what he has necessarily. So how do you build a game plan around that and everything? Right. And they're still borderline top 10 offense right now, even with all the mistakes, even with all the stumbling out of the gate. And all, I mean, there is every reason to be excited about the future for this offense.
And also the injuries. I mean, Jordan Love has not had Aaron Jones for much of this. Christian Watson, once again, unavailable for a great deal of this. Luke Musgrave just now designated to return. And I am with you. So we can roll with this if you want for a little bit, that offensively, if we can get the defense fixed, which right now to me, it's without question, there has to be a change at defensive coordinator. We'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
But offensively, if this team can stay healthy, this group of young players, I mean, so you draft Luke Musgrave, you draft Tucker Kraft, at the position that, and Matt LaFleur is right, in my opinion, it's the second most difficult position on the field to learn.
Yeah.
And Musgrave picks it up immediately. Musgrave goes out with injury, and Tucker Kraft with another, he got cup checked on this last one, but another hurdling moment out there. But I mean, I think if you can put it all together, then Jordan Love, and then get the offensive line short up, Jordan Love really could turn into that, even if the defense isn't playing well, kind of guy that could carry a team.
And you could argue those are the three most critical pieces as far as Matt LaFleur trying to build around a certain thing. I mean, no question, the offense has to have a Christian Watson element, and you can see the negative effects when it doesn't. There's also no question the impact a guy like Aaron Jones has had every time he's in a game. It's just a different dynamic. And it seems maybe a little silly to say that about Musgrave, but I think this offense has been searching for that kind of a guy for a long time. And I think Matt LaFleur would never hesitate if he did hit his peak to really expand on and build around a guy like that. So, I mean, we are several pegs down, and that's not to discredit what we've seen from Wicks and some of these other guys. Jaden Reed has been fantastic. But I really do think if you picked three guys that Matt LaFleur would want to sort of center his offense around, you could argue that those are the three guys, the ones that we have not seen hardly all year.
Right. And, a Mike McCarthy offense, you can draft all the tight ends you want. It's very rare that you're going to find one that's going to be good enough to make a difference. The Packers now have two in a Matt LaFleur offense that that is geared toward getting those tight ends and making them work. But not having now, let me just caveat, excuse me for a second. What are your thoughts on Christian Watson? I hate it because my career ended by injury, and I always hate it when the guys start getting criticized because they are often injured. But at this point, I mean, Christian Watson really is undergoing something. What's your read on him in terms of durability going forward?
Well, it's twofold. I mean, on one hand, criticizing him is nonsense. It doesn't really make any sense to. I mean, it's not his fault. He's not doing so. He's doing everything he possibly can. The second thing in his favor, I think, is I kind of pointed out. Aaron Jones went through a lot his first 2 years. He was never really healthy. There's other guys like that, and they showed more health as time went on. However, one of the things that I talk about when it's like injury prone is like, well, it depends on the injury. If a guy gets a concussion or if he breaks a rib, somebody lands on your shoulder and it pops out of, like, that's not something you can control. But you start getting soft tissue injuries and things, there could be something like that, especially when it doesn't seem like there's much going on. I mean, that last time, he just kind of pulled up. It was weird. So I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not a doctor, but I know that everybody's built differently, and obviously he's such an explosive human being with the amount of speed and obviously the power that he generates to move his body the way that he does. It may just be a continued problem. I'm sure they're going to keep looking into it. I'm sure they're going to keep talking to people about regimens and stretching or whatever kind of stuff that they can do, hydration. It could just be an issue, though. I just the only thing I can say is we don't know that definitively. It is unfortunate. It's something we should prepare for, as far as a possibility, but it's not something that we need to rush to. First of all, trashing the guy, which is nonsense, and then the other thing is we should trade him. There's no reason to do that whatsoever. It's too early for that, and even if it was to that point, if it's so bad that he can't play, nobody wants him. So let's just relax. And get through the year. 0. So we'll just see how it goes.
I have a theory, and it has been reinforced. It was just today. I think I saw. I've been doing some of this gymnastic strength. It's basically calisthenics, all body weight stuff. Incredibly stressful on all of the connective tissue. So I had this past September. I Joe Burrowed my calf. I blew out my calf. And I'm trying to let people know people don't realize that a strain is it's a very painful. I heard an audible pop. I mean, it's a painful. My ankle was as big as my calf by the time all was said and done. This is a pretty serious injury. But it was funny. And this is what I'm at it, because I've talked about this before with my folks. But what I heard this week was I was watching a gymnast talk about their training. And he said, I have never heard of a gymnast who has heard of another gymnast who has ever had a hamstring strain. And my theory is if we got some of those exercises involved, we'd have, because never in my football career, I don't know about you, never in my football career did I ever work on my joints. Did I ever work on those soft tissues? And I wonder, you got to feel like the NFL is ahead of everything. Frankly, I don't believe that they are right now. So,
and they're so focused on specific types of training geared toward how can I make you the most elite wide receiver in terms of your running, your route running, your jumping, your catching, and all those kinds of things. You're not necessarily thinking in those terms. Like, should we completely revolutionize the way you work out? Which, by the way, gymnastic training is so intense, like some of the strongest human beings on planet Earth. But it could get to that point of being drastic where, hey, look, maybe we do kind of gear down a little bit on what we're pushing you to do as far as being a wide receiver, and try to do some different stuff. We've heard about guys doing, as far as even like ballet and things of that nature, obviously wrestling and those kinds of things.
The wrestling.
But Yeah, everything's on the table when your career is in balance, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's sad to say, but I feel like if Christian Watson, Packer Nation was ready to offload Devontae Adams year two with an ankle injury, and
Yeah.
these hammies do tend to linger. So hopefully, all the best to him. Health to him. One more good. I know this is a short part of our conversation, and this is not good, but I do want to hear your comments. Baker Mayfield was really good.
Mm.
So 22 of 28, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a perfect 158.3 passer rating. The first time a visiting quarterback has ever done it at Lambeau Field. You have always
Sickening.
been my favorite ranter. So if you want a minute, go ahead. This means something to me. It really means something to me to let this happen.
Well, I mean, that's a good point because, we all saw how bad it was, but to hear something like that it kind of shakes you to your core a little bit because there is a lot of pride as far as Lambeau Field. And I mean, there's been some bad defenses. There's been some great quarterbacks. There's been all kinds of stuff. To allow Baker Mayfield the ability to do something so historic in such a historic place is such an infuriating thing that just, again, as a Packer fan, it just shakes you to your core a little bit to where it's like that this is the fact that we allowed this to happen is so infuriating. Yeah, I did get through a little bit of the QB school guy talking about it, and he's trying to talk about Baker Mayfield and and what he was doing, but half the video is just I don't know what the Packers are doing here. I don't understand, and
Can believe.
Again, and I'm trying to get to the point of like, well, who's to blame? Is it Joe or the players? But it's like, at the same time, it just doesn't matter. The whole thing is just broken. And the Joe Barry thing is not even a question anymore. Even if you tell me the scheme is fine, it's just the locker room is gone. The guys don't get it. Mm-hmm. It's not working. So it's just, again, my thing with the defense has been I just don't really care anymore. I've shut that part of my brain off. I want to see the offense grow. We'll focus on defense next year. Obviously, I'm concerned that maybe there are some player issues and obviously locker room issues, but we don't know that. Let's move forward. Let's find a defensive coordinator that can hopefully, kind of get the troops motivated and, kind of build something a little bit better. But, it's unfortunate that it unraveled to such a degree that something like that could happen in Lambeau. And I mean, if that happened against the Chiefs, it would have been like, okay, it's Pat Mahomes or whatever. Baker Mayfield, like, come on, man. It's just that's so unacceptable in my mind. It makes you think I wish we had done something sooner because we should not have allowed it to get to this point is all I can think to say.
Yeah. It's nowhere near as historic as when was it Michael Vick with the Atlanta Falcons came and handed the Packers their first loss at Lambeau Field in the playoffs, right? I believe that was. Ran all over us.
It could be, yeah.
But this might be more disgusting. This
might
just be more disgusting.
Right. So, I mean, because again, Michael Vick, it's infuriating, but it's Michael Vick. Even Colin Kaepernick, it's infuriating, but it's like that's what he does. Like he runs all over people.
Right.
This is not what he does. This is not, Baker Mayfield
commercials.
is not going to be at the top of anybody, in 20 years. Of the people that remember his name, it's not going to be for being the greatest at any single thing. And I'm not going to pretend he's the worst, but he should not be holding any records at Lambeau Field at all.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing is, the one thing he's going to make sure and tell his kids.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure they tell their kids and his grandkids, I had a perfect passer rating at Lambeau Field. But, well, before we move on to the suck, one last, this is the thing, and I haven't had a chance to really think through this, and so maybe you can enlighten me. The defense had 5 sacks in this 158.3 passer rating. Van Ness had a sack. Who had Kenny had 2. Pretty much everybody was getting sacks. Wyatt had a sack in this one. So, number one, that tells me I do think there is something to be excited about if we can get this defense in the right hands and get Ja back. You need to get Ja back. You need to get Eric Stokes kind of healthy. He clearly was not fully ready to play.
Yeah,
but
right.
At least there's something you can potentially hang your hat on, even in such a terrible performance. The back end looked absolutely awful, but there were some good things going on up front.
It's weird because in such a bad performance, you almost, at least for me, block it out of your mind because I saw we had 5 sacks and I thought, no, we didn't. Like
I had to go back and count them.
Yeah, we had the strip sack that was a fumble recovery, and it's like I don't remember. And it's like even as I'm seeing, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I remember that. But and honestly, that just makes it so much worse because how bad does your coverage have to be when you have that level of performance from your pass rush?
Oh, right.
And it's not even, I mean, I'm not going to pretend they didn't run that well, but it wasn't like they dominated on the ground. It just, I don't know if I've ever seen such a bad performance in coverage, and that's saying something as a Packer fan. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can look at it on the positive side. I've always liked our pass rushers. Rashawn Gary has really been lacking a little bit the last few weeks, which is kind of worrying, I guess. But, I mean, he even had 4 pressures on 27 attempts, which is completely fine. I love Wyatt. I think he is massively underrated. I think Wyatt reminds me of Rashawn, where he's playing a lot better than people realize in his earlier years. Everybody thought Rashawn was terrible, and it's like, you don't understand. Like, his stats are actually quite good. Kenny, of course, can pop off once in a while. We haven't even talked about the rookies very much, in the last several weeks, but those guys, I think, have some talent. So, yeah, I mean, and Lucas Van Ness, I just went over, I think, yesterday on the podcast talking about how he compares to Rashawn because their pass rush reps are almost identical in their rookie seasons, and they're very, very similar in every way. So, yeah, there's a lot to look forward to there. I still think, I know the fans are frustrated with Jair for whatever reason. I still think he's a fantastic football player. There's a lot to be excited about for this defense, and certainly there's every reason to believe that with the amount of talent we have, it should be producing better than like the 30th ranked defense that we are right now. So, I mean, I don't shudder to even say it, but 2024 should be a lot better, I would think.
It should be. Defensively, it'd be hard for it to get worse.
Oh, man, it's seriously.
Happy New Year, Ryan.
I don't even want to say it because I'm going to jinx it.
Yes, we all fear that. Yeah. Yeah, and I've been a big Van Ness fan as well. I actually didn't realize that their rep count. I would have thought his rep count would be higher than Rashawn Gary's.
So I think overall it is, but the pass rush is like identical.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah. Well, and good for him. I mean, maybe it's a little easier position than coming in as a rookie and playing tight end or something like that in terms of the mental side of it. But dang, you got to go out against the best offensive linemen. These are seasoned guys, and that's hard to be. Offensive lineman in the NFL is a really difficult position to play. And he has not jumped off the page, but I mean, I think we'd agree. Neither did Rashawn Gary really his first year.
Right.
And so to see him start to make an impact makes me also fairly excited about what the future brings. And I'm just going to throw this out there. This is somewhere else on my list, but I really think, and I'm interested in your comments, Matt LaFleur's choice of defensive coordinator, and we're all assuming it's going to be the case. And I think we all will implode if it's not. There's just no way. But I think this may be Matt LaFleur's swan song, or it may be his opus magnum at this point. Like, if he gets the right defensive coordinator, I think this defense could really be exactly what all of us have thought it could be. Obviously, we don't know about the injuries. It's been rough, but Ja would be back. And of course, you get Eric Stokes, potentially playing up to his. Savage has played better this year. However, if he gets the wrong one, you were there. You had Aaron Rodgers for 2 years. You went 13-3. Aaron Rodgers last year, you didn't make the playoffs. Love's first year, you kept hanging on to Barry, overlapping that entire time. If you get the wrong guy now, I think it could be potentially it for Matt LaFleur at some point here.
Yeah, I mean, there's the issues with Matt are mounting, and I hate it because I may be alone in this. I love his play calling. I love what he is as a play caller, a play designer. I love his scheme. I love the creativity. It's so much better, and I don't mean to, come down on McCarthy or whatever. He was a good coach for a long time, but this is so much more innovative and exciting. And I'm always amazed how many guys come open on third down, 3rd and 7. You got a guy open for 10 yards. Like, it feels like that never happens. And it's just so consistent. So, and again, with the injuries and blah, blah, blah. But outside of the play calling, there are very serious concerns. I mean, the constant, just not being prepared, guys just imploding, especially on the road, they're just not being ready. And the defensive coordinator being an issue. And now I'm really starting to be concerned about the locker room and the way that he handles things. I don't like that he seems to continually throw a lot of players under the bus, especially to save people that are not going to be here very long, like Joe Barry and Aaron Rodgers. I find that to be incredibly problematic. So, I mean, he's in my mind kind of hanging on by a thread. It's just a really important thread that I don't want to lose. So I'm hoping that things go in the right direction as opposed to the wrong direction, because you're right. It's possible that, if it goes in that direction and the team starts losing, you're kind of left with, yes, the offensive play caller could get worse, but for crying out loud, there's got to be somebody that can call plays that can do all of these other things better. And we may have to explore that, because you're just not going to win if your guys don't believe in you, they're not playing for you, and you can't find a defensive coordinator and all these things. It's like, I hate it because I'm so scared of getting worse, but we might just have to do it. So it is a big deal. It really is. And I hope that they need to expend every resource. I mean, not just Matt LaFleur, but Gutekunst and Mark Murphy. I mean, it needs to be the most important thing that they do is finding the perfect defensive coordinator. It can't just be a Matt LaFleur thing. I mean, he can make the final decision, I guess, but all these guys really need to have input. They need to be talking to the players. They need to get all their staff on, just whether it's breaking down the numbers of what kinds of schemes are working or whatever. I don't know what it is, but there is nothing more important than finding that right guy, because that could be the difference between us missing the playoffs for the next 5 years and us, really contending for a Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was struck with the thought today that, if Matt LaFleur's message to the team is as stale as his message to the press right now, which I don't know, because I don't know what it is. Right. But we could be in real trouble unless something super exciting. And he's always tried to be a player-led team kind of coach. There's times, and you look at, Joe Barry, and we talked to Clayton, Packers Total Access. He's part of the, Packernet Podcast Network. And he has always been kind of breaking down how Joe Barry's scheme could work if it was executed properly. Now we're seeing the possibility that we're seeing it not executed properly, number one. I have at times, and in this game, I will decry some of the just lunacy that I see on the defense, just stuff that you don't do from the time you're in 7th grade. You don't do. You got Rudy Ford out there. He doesn't know. He's got his hands up, doesn't know what the call is. Okay, that's a communication issue. He ends up turned around twice in this game. He has his back to a wide receiver streaking.
It's embarrassing to watch.
It's embarrassing. That's a cardinal sin for a safety. Yeah. And he's cutting off his inside foot, which is baby talk. You learn that from the time you can't cut off your inside foot in cleats on grass ever. And so I have been, I'm a big players play the game kind of a guy for the most part, but the coaches have to motivate the players. The coaches have to educate the players, and that job is just not getting done. So it's definitely time for a change. Let me just ask you this quick. Were you and I think I know this if I went, because I listened to your latest, which was very rant heavy, if I remember right. So go Ryan once again. But were you a fire Joe Barry after this game guy?
I kind of waffled on it a little bit, just because I felt like so much more work needed to be done to really answer some of the questions, as opposed to I didn't want to just start screaming fire Joe Barry. I think there's too much of that. But I think I just got to the point where it's like, it doesn't matter, honestly, to me, if it's a scheme issue or not, because if it's not, it's an education issue, it's a coaching issue, it's a motivation issue, it's a preparation issue, it's a game plan issue. Like, there's so many things that go into what the coach is responsible for that's just not getting done. But yeah, I mean, I think after the Giants game, it kind of just became, okay, I think we got the answer. And after the Tampa game, it was like, prior to the Tampa game, I think I would have said he's not going to get fired this year, but next year it needs to get done. And then after Tampa, it's like he might have to get fired after this game, just as far as sending a message. And I think we're seeing some of the repercussions of that. He stood by Joe Barry and talked about the players' mistakes, and the players are running to social media and they've got all these comments and they clearly are not happy. And it's like, I don't know if that was the right decision. I understand sticking by the guy, but I'm worried that we are doing damage to the cohesion between our players and our coaches for the sake of, I just don't want to do something rude to Joe Barry when we can wait a few weeks. And I will say, if we lose to Carolina in such a way that the defense is a major part of that, again, being one of the worst offenses in football, I don't think it's a question. It has to happen. It just does.
Yeah, that's me for sure. And I almost might be proactive about it to see if we can get a spark. But, I think, I turned to bet. I was there I was at the Cardinals game after which Mike McCarthy got fired. And I said on the concourse walking out, I said, I think he might be canned before the night's over. And we got home and he was gone. But I think, and I said the same thing to Benj about Joe Barry in this one. What I think we need to pause anytime we think that. And I was a fan. I was up in the stands. I was feeling all that emotion. I was not an analyst of any kind, but somebody losing a job is a very important thing. And I do, whatever happens, I think it is time to move on from Joe Barry, whether it be after the Carolina game or after the season. I hope he finds a place where his skills and talents and abilities, can be used at the right level. I think this happens all the time in football. You get a coach who at a coordinator level is just not able to, that's an administrative position at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of these guys are just flat out coaches and they may be great at it, but sometimes the situation can just make it. And it's gone on long enough. We've seen this. But I do hope if/when that happens that, Joe Barry, finds a place. He's got a family. He talked about how hard this has been, the hardest week. But he also talked about the fact that my title is defensive coordinator. You would think we'd be coordinated by now.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's one of those things too, where it's like, what could possibly happen that could change things? And I think the answer is nothing. I mean, when you look at the full body of work, like I mentioned before, it's like you went to college for 4 years and you're running a really low GPA. You can't take 3 classes and fix that. And you got 3 classes left. Right. It doesn't matter if you get straight 4.0 across the board on those classes. It's not going to bump you enough. You're not going to graduate, so I just don't think, even with the most dominant defensive performance, it doesn't move the needle, which again brings you back to the question of what are we waiting on? And the only thing I can think is maybe we go on a run in the playoffs and okay, fair enough. But again, if we lose, that excuse is gone. So it is what it is, I guess. I don't know.
It is what it is. And again, you got another game to watch, another game that we should win that you get to watch. Yeah. And we'll just go, to me, like, losing to the Vikings at US Bank right now, that game looks scarier than it should be. And I hate losing to the Vikings. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields can't run all over this team right now. But we shall see, I guess, soon enough. But it's like you say, there's only 3 games left. You needed to put yourself in a position. You had the perfect position to be right in the playoff. You were in the playoffs. You were at the 7th seed. And basically we blew it at that point. So we'll move on from there. But I am 100% with you on my biggest fear right now. And this goes to Jair Alexander. I'm interested in your thoughts on that too. I almost feel like Jair Alexander doesn't really want to get out on the field and risk himself for this team either. We know what Devondre Campbell said. I'll read it again real quick, but my biggest fear is exactly what you put your finger on, that we're losing this team in the locker room. But Devondre Campbell this week said, not going out my way anymore. I'm not playing through injuries anymore, because when shit goes wrong, they always use it against you. I'm treating everyone accordingly and giving them the same energy they giving me. Focus on yourself and your mental, 59. You owe it to yourself. Handshake to self, I guess is what that is at the end of that. I don't know what that is. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, again, when the Jair thing, like, it just kind of caught me off guard, because I started seeing rumblings about, like, maybe Jair isn't coming back because he doesn't want to. I'm like, why would you say something like that? That's so stupid. And then I saw, like, he didn't travel with the team, and it's like, well, he didn't travel with there was an article, whatever. He didn't travel with the team. Some people are upset. And apparently he stayed behind, which is normal. He does it a lot to try to rehab so that he can get back on the field. So I'm like, I don't understand, like, what the issue is. And then there was one part, like, I was doing a podcast about how stupid it was, essentially, that people thought this. But there was one part in his press conference as I'm going through it where he said something to the effect of, if I'm not 100%, I don't want to be on the field. And I thought, that's a weird comment that doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know why you would say that. But anyways, we'll just disregard that, move on, and whatever. And then Devondre Campbell comes out and says this. And you pair that with, again, these guys being thrown under the bus to save Joe Barry. And it's starting, like the picture's starting to come clear. And although I think some of the Jair stuff is wildly overblown, we got guys in Packers media saying, I don't think he'll ever take a snap in Green Bay, which who knows, maybe that's true. But I think although some of that's overblown, I do think we're starting to see a picture that is these defensive players are really doing the best that they possibly can. They are, fighting through injuries and are constantly being thrown under the bus, and they're just tired of it. And they're saying, what's the point? Why am I coming back risking injury so that, when we're not being put in advantageous situations to begin with, then we have the coaches come out and say, yeah, these guys don't know how to communicate. They can't do day one install stuff. And it's like, you know what, man, I'm tired of this. I'm just absolutely tired of it. And again, I wish, I'm sure Matt LaFleur is trying to be tactful and just not throw Joe Barry under the bus and trying to be neutral or whatever. But it's just like, I feel like these guys need a bone thrown to them. They're getting crucified right now. They're getting beat up real bad. At some point, just take it all on yourself. Say, this is a coaching failure. We have failed these guys. We have so much talent. We have guys that are putting their heart on this, on that field. We got guys that shouldn't even be on the field. They're so beat up. We have to save them from themselves sometimes. And we have failed them as coaches, and that's on us. And we need to, and it's just like, he just won't do it. And it's like, I don't know why you won't. I understand that Joe Barry's your buddy and whatever, but you're losing some very key players here. And like you said, Jair is the biggest concern. If it was just Devondre, it's like, that sucks, but he's getting older. It's kind of like a Za'Darius thing. He wasn't going to be here much longer anyways. But you lose Jair, and then you got to worry about, it can't just be these two. These are just the two being somewhat vocal. That there's other guys. I mean, now I'm looking at Rashawn Gary sitting on the bench by himself with his head back, and the fact that he hasn't had a good game in like 5 weeks, and it's like, it's very concerning. And again, Stokes, that bothered me because you got Stokes out there being put on an island. Why aren't you helping Stokes in this game? No, he gets thrown on an island, and then when he fails against one of the best wide receivers in football, we throw him under the bus.
Right.
It's like, man, I don't like the way this is being handled. It's like, we just have 3 weeks. We need to hang on. But, man, a lot of damage can be done in 3 weeks.
That's for sure. This is, to me, a very much a where there's smoke, there's fire type of a situation. And I even go back to one of Matt LaFleur's press. Of course, I should preface this by, my podcast is called Hot Cheese. So hot takes, we love them here. We got no problem whatsoever with just going all stupid on this stuff. But I even listened to Matt LaFleur, and but when he was talking about Jair, and this was a couple weeks ago, and he seemed like really almost not just frustrated, but disappointed. And it did seem that to me, and that was before obviously the Devondre Campbell thing, that something might really be wrong. There might be some bad blood here. And I'm like you, if that gets in and that kind of cancer starts to grow, it doesn't ever stay put. Like if we know Devondre Campbell feels that way, it's like you say, somebody else does. If somebody else does, pretty soon somebody else is going to, i.e. you just mentioned Rashawn Gary sitting there. Players can't help but check out at some point. And frankly, the way that Baker Mayfield had a perfect passer rating, it almost seems like this defense is checking out. So hopefully we can avoid that.
100%. I mean, that kind of stuff, man, like I understand that. And this is another thing I said, like that. I understand the defense is bad. It's not that bad. It's never been that bad. And then you got guys like looking at Devondre and what a bad game he played. And like, he's completely lost out there. And it's true. Like he played a bad game and he did some bad stuff, as a lot of these guys did. But this is not even a poorly coached version of the Green Bay Packers defense that is not meeting its potential. That was a whole other level of awful that I have not seen. And you're right. I don't know what else to attribute that to than a team that's checked out, a team that, rather than being motivated and like really in the book, they're sitting around texting each other about, FJB and all this kind of stuff. These coaches do this, and these guys, and that stuff starts to spread and spiral. And of course, when a big pass gets given up, you just quit. And again, it's human nature. You start getting kicked in the teeth, and you're like, here we frickin' go again, man. And the coaches are yelling at you, and the fans are getting all restless. And yeah, again, this is the spiraling effect that I just really want to avoid. And I don't know. Either we rally the troops and we have a good performance against Carolina and we build on that, or we don't and things continue to spiral, and a message has to be sent to the locker room. And I'm not talking about a message that says you guys keep screwing up. I'm talking about the exact opposite. Right. You know what? This is on us. I'm very sorry. Joe has to go. And that's the message, because words can only say so much. This is action. We're putting this into action. I'm demonstrating to you that this is a coaching failure, that we have failed you, and he's going to be moved on from, and we're going to find somebody better that's going to be able to teach you, to educate you, to coach you, to call games, to game plan, whatever. It is becoming a big concern for me.
Yeah. And of course that'll be a big topic, in a month here for sure. And I have a couple guys that I have in mind. I'm trying not to think about who I want to be in this position, because right now it's not going to change. And ride out the rest of this season. When things were bad earlier in the season, we had we have 4-game losing streak or whatever. And I imagine you may have said something like this to your folks too, but like the rest of this season really it's just data gathering. You're just going to find out who's playing well, give yourself a chance to evaluate, reset. Now, then you beat the Chiefs and you beat the Lions and you feel like, man, look at our chances to go to the playoffs. Maybe we won't go deep, but let's go. Let's do this thing. And then you see this team, which we should have understood from day one was going to be a very volatile team. I know Andy Herman's used that term several times. But what happens from here on out? Because now I think on the horizon, you've got to look at 2 NFC, and I'm obviously overlooking the Carolina Panthers right now. That's the team on the docket. But the 2 teams that I'm thinking about a lot are the Minnesota Vikings at US Bank and the Bears playing at Lambeau Field, which does not seem to be much of an advantage when, again, you can have Baker Mayfield come and do what he did. And I do still want to see this team play with pride. We are still the Green Bay Packers. And someone has to do something if players are checked out, to sit them down and say, hey, listen, it's just like you said, you might have to do it face to face. We're not fixed right now, but we're going to get it fixed. I want you to play for pride. It has nothing to do with the playoffs. It has nothing to do with the money. If you're a player in contract, good for you. Get out there and play, because this is the Green Bay Packers, and we don't put stuff like we saw this past Sunday on the field. That's not what we do. So hopefully by the time this offseason is up, we can get that replacement in that's going to do that, because I just don't see that happening. And frankly, it doesn't seem like Matt LaFleur. That's the one thing I'm not sure Matt LaFleur is capable of doing at this point.
Yeah, as far as the the Devondre Campbell thing too, the part that I didn't like in the beginning was talking about, I'm just not going to do it anymore, kind of throwing yourself a pity party. And, same with Jair, just talking about, well, I'm not going to play if I'm not 100%. There has to be an element of personal pride, I think, in terms of, do it for, what is that who you want to be? You know what I mean? I understand you're upset with your defensive coordinator and the way that they do things and all that kind of stuff, but on some level, it's just, I'm freaking Jair Alexander, and this is what I do. I play hard. I work hard. It's up to you if you want to earn those contracts. I know Jair just got paid, but I just don't think this is a good precedent to set for yourself. I don't think it's a good precedent to set for the locker room. This is clearly not leadership type behavior, which is not a great thing. And so, it's just a matter of what kind of a person do you want to be? What kind of a leader do you want to be? What kind of a, whatever. And I guess I just wish they were handling this a little bit differently, as opposed to taking the I'm going to throw myself a pity party kind of approach to things. Although I understand their position, I just don't really like that. But again, I do hope that, we get a new defensive coordinator, the guys give him a chance and they respect him, and all that stuff goes out the window.
Right.
Because, we're just starting fresh. But that's the only thing I wanted to add to that is I don't like that they decided to take that approach, and would love to see them just kind of show some personal pride, even in these final 3 weeks. Just go out there and ball out, because that's what you freaking do,
That 100%. I know the handful me being probably about 9 million times when I've gotten myself in trouble with what I do is when I let my emotions out over social media.
Oh yeah.
And he has every right to feel the way he feels. I would never contradict that. He has every right to be pissed off about the way the defense played, about the way he played, and he knows why it happened that way too. And so if that's a Joe Barry thing, that's a Joe Barry thing with him. For me, it was, what are you accomplishing by tweeting it? It's going to do nothing but harm. It can't. And to me, to some extent, the first time I read it, my read on it was that the target was not Joe Barry, but us fans. And that
was my first read.
Yeah. And it's, it's unprofessional. Number one, I'm so glad you said that is the exact opposite of leadership. The hardest thing when adversity like that comes up is to do things the right way. And again, I love Devondre Campbell. I'm right with you. I hope we get things together. We don't lose the locker room. I'm really afraid of that. But that was the one thing on him. It was like, Devondre, what did you accomplish by doing this? Did you really feel better? I mean, so we will see how it all plays out moving forward. But I have taken more than enough of your time. I do want to know, I kind of wondering, I'm kind of assuming that you are a Christmas celebrating household. So I'm wondering if anything interesting is going on. Have you got all your presents packed under the tree? Are there anybody dressing up like Rudolph in a Christmas play? What's going on in the Schlipp household there?
Well, Mom has done a great job wrapping. Dad is slacking severely in that category. So there's like a bunch of presents under the tree that Mom did. There's a bunch of Amazon boxes sitting in our bedroom that Dad needs to get to work on. But no, I'm excited about it. We, I usually you're not really sure how you feel about the gifts or whatever. I'm excited. I feel like I did a good job this year with some of the stuff that I got. And we also have a weird little balance this year where Mom's going for quantity and Dad's going for quality.
Oh,
I'm getting
nice.
getting one thing, but it's freaking sweet, and Mom's just excited because she's going to fill our living room with presents for the kids to open. So, we'll see how that, we've been going back and forth on that for a while, but no, I'm excited for it. I had a listener, I won't say just in case, the family hears it or whatever, but, had a listener give us an offer that I think is going to be a really good Christmas gift for the family. I'm excited to unravel that. So it'll be kind of a big thing that we've never really done together before. So that'll be kind of cool. So I'm excited. Should be a good Christmas.
Okay. Holiday traditions. Do you travel or stay home or?
So what we do is Christmas Eve, we go to my grandma's house. And we celebrate with family. Christmas Day, since I got married, the tradition for me has been, it's been my request, and my wife has honored it. I'd like to be home for Christmas. Christmas is very special. I loved Christmas as a kid. I thought my parents, they didn't do things perfectly, but they did Christmas perfectly. And it was just such a great experience. You wake up in the morning and there's cookies and there's Christmas music and there's the tree that's decorated with those little things that go around, and it's just such a great experience, and I don't want that to be clouded with stressful, like get up, get dressed, we got to go to Aunt Ned, so-and-so's house. And nope, Christmas is just us together in our pajamas, eating cookies, listening to Christmas music, opening presents, and just spending time together. So, we do the hopping from house to house and on other days, but Christmas is just us.
You should, you got enough people to Christmas carol in your neighborhood there, Ryan. Got enough folks in the house.
That's true. Yeah, we pretty much have a family reunion just with our family. We got so many people.
That's right, and a dog too. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my family was mom and dad very similar. Mom went for quantity. Dad for quality. And it's interesting that you say I'm terrible at rapping. My brother is awesome at it. Like, he can rap things perfectly. I hate him for it.
Sure.
I don't love you, bro. But it's interesting because Dad, he would do that. He would get the one sort of more expensive thing, something that we would use for a long time, but he would not wrap it, was what he did. So I would come downstairs for Christmas, and here's leaning up against the wall by the Christmas tree is my 10-speed bike, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was, I was like, kudos to Dad on that one. Mom had all the, you know, you got to watch, you got to ripping up the stuff and all that kind of stuff. And we did have the quantity there. So they were both great at it, but yeah. And then of course Dad taught. So we would do Christmas at home every year. But then we'd eat a good breakfast or a late breakfast or early lunch. And then we would pack up and go to the Augustine side for Christmas. And then we went to the McNulty side, my mom's side, for New Year's. So, and you'll be familiar. She lived in La Crosse, so they would shoot, you know, I think that, well, I don't know if they just did that for New Year's, but New Year's, yeah, they would shoot fireworks off the bluff, Granddad Bluff up there, and we could see them from her house. So, well, good traditions. And man, it's great to have you. I really appreciate it. I've collaborated with you more than anybody else, but I felt bad. Would have loved to have a chance to stop by, and I got to drag that Clayton guy up there and Aaron here too. Come up and see you one of these days. Yeah,
I mean, ideally better weather. You know, if you're gonna if we're gonna hang out, let's do it in summer or spring or something, and we'll get the grills going and we'll have a good time. I'm looking forward to it, but I plan on doing this for a long time, so no rush. We'll get together, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of collaborations over the many years of us doing this.
Heck yeah, it sounds good. And I hear Clayton's a big griller too. Maybe we need to get another total tailgating out there on the interwebs for people. So,
well, maybe what we could do is have a little cook off, because I know you came up and did the burgers, and I've got a collection of grills going on. We'll have Clayton going, and we'll have my picky family can determine what's edible and what's terrible.
That's right. That sounds like a plan, man. We'll have to put that one together, and sooner, hopefully, rather than later, which is at least May. But you know, I mean, that's the soonest we could be doing it. But well, let everybody know before we let you go. Let's let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so just the Packernet podcast. Find it anywhere you find your podcasts. There are YouTube channels, also Packernet podcast. That isn't updated quite as much. Otherwise, if you want to just kind of follow along with my not super interesting musings, I'm over on Twitter or X or whatever at Pack_Daddy.
All right, man. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining me, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, very glad to have Ryan with us today. This is my first time having a repeat guest on the show. Obviously, no Aaron today. More's the pity. But the Packers roll into another important game, and I think this one is important to once again see if this team has anything in the tank going into what looks like not a playoff run. Packers against the Carolina Panthers. We'll be talking all about it. You can catch up with us on all your podcasting platforms. You can look me up on YouTube. Facebook will have both the podcast version and the video version, and we will hope to see you next time on Hot Cheese. Go Pack.
Packer Nation worldwide.